What's up, everybody? Welcome in to another session of Hot Wax. I am your host, Kurt Finn of Kurt Finn Music. This is already episode 7, and it's cool that we've moved into the Duck Inn, into my bar. It's a little bit more personable than the studio, but it's kind of cool hanging out in here. On episode 7, we're going to be, talking about an album that from a band that I have just kind of recently turned on to within the last couple of years. And it was kind of cool finding this band because when I first heard them, I have 2 teenage sons, and we were playing some video games, and I'd first heard this band on one of their video games, and I heard a song called Sunday. It was a split EP, and the other band that played with them covered, the song. Their hit, their song was called Medicine, which was a song I really liked. But they played a song called Sunday. Which was a cover the first time I heard him, I was like, playing this video game, like, there was something really familiar, I could say, about their sound, right? It was like, when you hear something familiar and you kind of are like, not in a way that maybe you had been there before, or, something you felt you could relate to, right? And, the first time I heard it, I was blown away, and I was like, yeah, this is incredible. Ironically, it was the first time I ever heard Future Islands as well. But, after hearing that song, I didn't realize it was a cover. It was just so good. It kind of had like tones of like My Bloody Valentine. Just the way that it was arranged and produced, and the way that it was recorded, and the instrumentation and the singing, it gotten to me. So I had, felt compelled to, search this band and listen. This band, Momma. And the first blush, the first thing I heard from them was the album Household Name, that was released July 1st of 2022 on Polyvinyl Records. That was the first record I actually dove into, and I could say I was blown away. But what was really cool is I really liked their first album, Interloper. And, Two of Me is a great concept album out of town, and I'm a sucker about that. I mean, as you know, I wrote Storytone, but that was influenced by Neil Young's Greendale and Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska. But Two of Me was a very cool record because it kind of told a story about the town of where now these 2 girls kind of met in high school. From what I understand, they're from Calabasas, California. To me, they're, obviously California, it's a soft spot in my heart. It's great, growing up in Chicago, it was great making music. In California, there was just a different vibe there. But the Household Name record, particularly, was the first album that I listened to. Of course, I loved those first other 2 albums, those kind of like Sea and Cake sounds of, Interloper, and obviously the Isaac Brock feel of Interlopers, the Modest Mouse, you kind of blow me away. But Ita Friedman, Ita, Ita's like, to me, an amazing vocalist, an amazing guitar player. And then Allegra Weingarten, she also amazing vocalist and amazing guitar player. Kind of feel that's like when you're starting a band and you have two musicians that kind of jive like that. You kind of realize that there's something special there, and 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 I heard that right away from these two girls. And then diving into them, I also listened to their solo music. Um, Listening to Allegra and Ita's solo stuff kind of gave me a little bit more of a perspective into what Momma had become, which is a band that has such a familiar sound to me, and some of the people my age, coming from that 90s era of, and I hate to, reference grunge, but, they kind of had that sound. Especially with Interlopers. I just, fell in love with that album, the guitar playing and the arrangements and everything. And they've changed some members. I believe, what really kind of changed that band was the addition of this multi-instrumentalist kid. He just has an ear for sound. Aaron Kobayashi Rich. This guy has an ear for sound. He produced and helped write and arrange a lot of their stuff, which, as a songwriter, like in my experience, I was always writing songs, right? And sometimes the producers and those guys helped so much in the process. Like Keith and I would be writing something, or and then you get into the studio, and then it's like you sit down with the producer, and they really help you. I think Aaron Kobayashi Rich, coming into this band really helped, Allegra and Ita with their production, their arrangements, kind of their hooks. Because one of the things about this band that I noticed right away was their power pop hooks. I mean, it was perfection, right? Of course, I realized listening to some of their earlier albums that it wasn't always like that. It was kind of more, and I hate, again, alternative, but very alternative, that Modest Mouse, Sea and Cake, Pavement, sound. So when it came to household name, right, for me, so when I first kind of turned it on, I, right away, I couldn't believe first of all, the songwriting, right? Like every hook was there. From the moment I heard Speeding, Speeding 72, and I went through the album, and this was last summer, so I spent like the whole summer listening to this fucking record, right? Like obsessing over it almost. Like I couldn't believe like the power pop presentation of it, the production of it, and everything that went along with this record. It was just, to me, it was just so familiar. It just really hit me. And it wasn't just the fact that it was something that I related to at my age, being an older cat that, cut my teeth with, kind of playing alternative garage psych, but it was something more than that. Like I said, when I first heard their cover of Sunday. But it had kind of this Breeders feel, right? Like when I first kind of broke out of listening to like 60s and 70s music, in the late 90s and early 2000s, when you heard My Bloody Valentine, or you heard the Smashing Pumpkins first couple albums, or you heard, some of these bands that, were kind of like, brand new to us at that time, It just changed the way I looked at things, and that's kind of how I felt about Household Name when I heard this record. It kind of brought me back to a certain time, but it also made me realize that the here and now is where it's at, and the future is going to be great, because with these kids playing this music, it absolutely blew me away. And Household Name is a record that I can honestly say that I played the wheels off this record. And I first heard it on Spotify, obviously, and then the first album I ordered was Household Name because it was sonically perfect. I really wanted to hear this thing on vinyl. And with Ita and Allegra's vocals and their guitar play, to me was amazing. And then the way the bass was produced, the way the drums were produced, I could not get enough of this record. And then not only that, but their whole discography. But the point is that Household Name was kind of their first, and I hate to say commercial, but kind of like a first commercial release. Obviously with Interloper and Two of Me, those were, not digestible for the regular person. I hate to use that term. But with Household Name, this album kind of had so many songs with perfect hooks and great lyrics and instrumentation that just, again, awakened a certain feeling for somebody my age or a little bit older, but also for the generation that was listening to it, brought to the forefront that the fact that, this sound is not, archaic. It's no Dinosaur. It's still very important. The Dinosaur Jr. sound. Like I said, Pavement, which is cool because they kind of reference Pavement. They reference Gold Sounds, right? They reference the Smashing Pumpkins. And, as I've learned, when I was living in Southern California, Allegra's father was, a music critic, a music writer, in California. So she had the opportunity, not as only probably people listening to it as I could imagine, but getting the music from your old man, hey, the Nirvana records or those Pavement records or the early Smashing Pumpkins records or those kind of 90s, rock records. Even to a certain extent, Stone Temple Pilots or whatever the case. And you can hear that in their guitar work. Which is another point. One of the things I really realized about the guitars, right? So in the spots, when Mike Camus was producing us, I used on the first album, I used a Gibson SG and a Fender Telecaster, Grand Ole Opry Tele. And that was kind of the way I layered that sound, was having the crisp, clear rock with the Tele, with the with the Fender, and then having that muddier, more hard rock sound with the SG. And that was something that I kind of recognized. And I'd never seen these girls play. I'd never seen this band play, and I hadn't gone down the YouTube rabbit hole. And then I went down the YouTube rabbit hole, and it's shit. They're using Fenders and SGs. They're using Teles and Strats and Gibsons and stuff, and they're getting that sound, right? So right away, I was like, man, shit, yeah. And I started watching a lot of their live performances, and starting to realize, just what a talented and just fucking awesome band this was, right? But not only that, but having the wherewithal to produce and have that sound with Kobayashi Rich, getting that actual sound of a time and space that I was part of, but I kind of referenced it before, but using the past, living in the present, and making sure that the future, is right there with music. But with Household Name, you put the record on, and song to song, right? So song to song, you just feel like there's something good happening here. And some of the Rockstar I love, but one of those songs that really blew me away was Motorbike. Tall Home, Spider. This record is one of those records where and that's kind of what I like to reference with Hot Wax is, again, it's like going back to the point, like the record from front to back moves you. It's familiar, or it's going to be familiar, or it's going to be a part of your life, or already was in some way or shape or form, or now it's back again. Or the feel of the record, that's something that makes you feel. And that's kind of what Momma did. I mean, or does. And their new album, they got a new album out too that I really like. But the cool thing about the household name was just how in tune and tone, and how the arrangements, just everything about the record, has just kind of really moved me. And I kind of feel like when I heard it, I was influenced. I was influenced to go back and pick up my electric guitar. I was influenced to go back and listen to some of the old tracks that kind of moved me. And not only that, but, kind of picking up some of my older guitars and looking for that sound, because obviously, I can feel it in Allegra's guitar playing. Some of the leads, as simplistic as they are, they're very complex, right? And Ita's rhythms are almost seeing, I mean, it's just, like I said, it's power pop mastery. And the way the vocal delivery is, the way that everything about this record is, it's just something that I at least connected with. And I still, every time I put it on, obviously, with every record that I go crazy about, I listen to it over and over and over again. And then, next thing I know, I'm on to something else. But this was a record that really moved me. Definitely had some Billy Corrigan tones and James E. Hart tones, and Kim and Kelly Deal of the Pixies, the Pixies and the Breeders, and Frank Black, and obviously Pavement. I mean, everything. I mean, you just, everything was represented with a tonal point of the past, but also using where it is now, where like kids of this generation could definitely, get into this record. And I can't figure, like why anyone would, not get into this record. And I've got to give these guys a lot of respect. I mean, last I, had learned about them, these guys were still fucking working part-time jobs. But to give them credit, to work this hard, to tour this hard, to go out there and push this product and keep working their asses off until, people started to realize this isn't some flash in the pan shit. This is really fucking good. And they're right up there with, I mean, really some of the fucking coolest alternative rock and roll bands I've ever heard. I mean, this album's right up there, with some of the best records, I'd put it up against anything. And I give them respect for the hard work and the touring. Obviously people in England are probably going to be more receptive to it than in the States, but, the Girl in Red feel to it. I mean, just, having a Stereolab sample. I mean, just everything. I mean, these guys really, really got it. And of course, the different use of guitars and amplifiers and sounds and influences. Having hooks, having bass line, just having, just great production. That Kobayashi Rich gives them. And of course, the push and pull of everything. But Household Name is just one of those records that, no matter how old I get or how young I believe I am, is always going to be one of the most important records that I've ever heard, in a very, 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 very long time. And I have you can see it in the corner there. I have one of the cool, red copies of it. And I just love putting on the hi-fi and just taking 45 minutes out of my day and letting this album, do its job. And, you got to give it up to, Allegra and Ita for enduring friendship for so long and writing such great songs and having many band members come in and out of the band. I know more about that than most, but being able to keep true to what they believe in and be able to convey their sound and believe in their beliefs and keep this band going as long as they have. You know, it's respectable. It's incredible. Household name. What a great record to go out and buy. I implore you, go out and buy this record and give these kids a listen, man. I mean, there's a lot going on. They moved their whole operation to New York, actually. Working with Polyvinyl, everything, but being from Calabasas, but also moving out to the East Coast and kind of harnessing that East Coast sound too. It's a great mixture of like this kind of West Coast pop with this East Coast grime. Like when I went out to California, bringing the Chicago sound to California, it's like kind of like the same thing. You kind of your geographical location always helps, your writing process. You're not just kind of, stuck in the same vein. But I would definitely recommend going out and getting this album and then, digging into some of their other records too, especially the new album. I really enjoyed it. I think it's Welcome to My Blue Sky is a great album, but Interlopers is great. Two of Me is amazing. But Household Name to me, like I said, it's like they put them on the map for me. And other people that I know, it's like, certain like heady musicians, I'll be like, hey man, you checked out Momma? And they're like, yeah, fuck yeah. If you listen to that shit, the guitar production is fucking perfection. So. With that being said, I'd like to wrap up episode 7. And, the next album I'm going to do coming into October is going to be one of my favorite October and fall albums to listen to. Nick Drake, Brighter Later. I'm going to try to do 2 albums in October. Being October, there's something I want to do at the end of the month, and Brighter Later I want to do now with the leaves changing and kind of the feel of everything kind of changing. Brighter Later is one of those great records that always matches with that, the break, into summer, into fall, very autumnal, and then I want to do something around Halloween. So I'm going to do 2 albums this month, but thanks for tuning in to Hot Wax with Kurt Finn. We're getting better and better every time, and I appreciate all the likes. If you have a Facebook page, please go to YouTube and create a YouTube page and check out my stuff. I'm gonna try to, be putting more of these on Facebook because I just can't stand Facebook. I'd rather do YouTube or something like that. But it's been cool going over Momma. Household Name. I recommend getting it. And I look forward to episode 8 with Nick Drake with Brighter Later. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in. Spin what you love and love what you spin. And by all means, take care of each other and love one another. All good things. Take care.